Hello, my friends. It is I, Karnak, with Star Wars Armada Explained. Today, we're going to be looking at one of my most favorite cards. We're going to be looking at Hondo Ohnaka. So, Hondo Ohnaka is the best pirate that ever is or ever will be. He's got a fantastic and interesting ability with his card text. Let's dive right in. So, Hondo Ohnaka, he is an officer. He's a unique officer. If you see there on his front of his name, you'll see a dot or bullet point signifies he is unique. You can only have one of him in your fleet. He is equipable to either side, either Imperial or Rebels, and he only costs 2 points. His ability, his card text is really small on Vassal and on what I have up here. So I'm going to bring up the Star Wars Armada wiki page so you can clearly see the text better. The text reads, "At the start of the ship phase, you may discard this card to choose 2 different command tokens and place them on 2 different ships. Then, your opponent chooses 2 different command tokens you did not choose and places them on 2 different ships." He does have a rules clarification in the FAQ. It says, when resolving this card's effect, both players must assign 2 command tokens to 2 different ships, even if they must assign tokens to enemy ships to do so. Your opponent can assign command tokens to ships that you assign tokens to. So it's a lot of text. I know a lot of people have asked me, it's like, I don't quite understand. What does this all mean? Let's dive right in. Let's figure this all out. So Hondo, uh, when does he start? It's at the start of the ship phase. So this is after you've set your command dials, and it can be on in the start of any turn, first, second, third, fourth, five, six. That's the start of the ship phase. So it's after you've set your command dials are done. Then it's the start of the ship phase. You say, I'm going to use Hondo Ohnaka. Now remember, first player still needs to resolve all of their timing abilities in the ship phase first before the second player. So why is that important? Well, remember, what are other things that have timing in the ship phase? Things like the fleet commands are timed in the ship phase as well. So, for example, if as the first player you spend tokens on fleet commands, and then the second player then can when he uses Hondo, when they're giving out tokens, that the timing, it's all important. So just remember, first player's first with all of his ship phase things, then second player second. This is also true, for example, if both players you bring Hondo Ohnaka and they both declare his use in the ship phase together. Remember, the first player then resolves his Hondo Ohnaka, second player resolves his Hondo Ohnaka, moving forward. Okay, so I'll give some more examples of that moving into it. So let's just talk about Hondo Ohnaka. How does he work? So we're going to say he's equipped to one of these Imperial ships here, and the Imperial player is saying, I'm going to use Hondo. Now, the first thing you do is you need to choose which 2 command tokens you want to place on 2 of your ships, or just rather 2 ships. It doesn't have to be your own ships. It could be one of your ships, it could be one of your opponent's ships, it could be both to your opponent's ships if you wanted to, or both to your own ships. Obviously, with this card, you don't want to give tokens to your opponent. Don't really recommend that. A lot of people have tried to interpret his card as being like, oh, if I give a token to my opponent, they're forced to take that token. No, absolutely not the case. Just like any time that you receive a new token on a ship, and they already have their command allotment of tokens, if they get a new token, they can decide if they want to discard a current token to take the new token, or they say, nah, I don't want that new token, and toss it out. You can't force a player to discard tokens of this card. I've seen a couple people try to play it that way, and that is not the case. So the first thing that happens, you choose 2 different command tokens. Remember, there's engineering, the squadron, concentrate fire, and navigation. So you choose 2 of those 4 to place on 2 ships of your choice. Then it flips to your opponent. And the 2 tokens that you did not choose, then your opponent gets to place those 2 tokens on 2 different ships of his choosing. Now, this is for in terms of timing and rule stuff. Say this Star Destroyer, I gave a token to him. Let's say I gave him a navigate, and for whatever reason, I gave this this MC-80 Mon Calamari Cruiser a token. Let's say I gave it Concentrate Fire. So those are my 2 tokens I chose. Now it's to the opponent. He's got a Squadron Command and an Engineering Command. Okay. So then he can place a token on one of his ships. The ship, like for example, I gave the Concentrate Fire to, he could put the Repair Command on. And then he can give the Squadron Command to the other ship. So remember, when it says 2 different ships, that's only applying to the current player. So the first player who gave out the first 2 tokens, okay, so it's 2 different ships that only he can put on. So when it flips to the other player, even though one of his ships had gotten a token, okay, that's 2 different ships. That only applies to the player the first time. The second time, the second part of the card, he didn't choose any of those ships. Okay, that doesn't apply to the second half of when the player's putting down his 2 tokens. Okay, so hopefully that's making sense there. I'll run through it again here in just a second. So again, and then when he does that, that's Hondo Ohnaka. So again, to go through it all real quickly, it's the start of the ship phase. The player says, I'm using Hondo Ohnaka. He chooses 2 of the 4 command tokens. He places those tokens on 2 different ships of his choosing, one on one ship, one on another. They can either both be his own ships, or it can be to his opponent's ships. Then the other half of the card, the 2 tokens you did not choose, goes to that player. Then he chooses 2 different ships that the first player, that doesn't matter. So he chooses 2 different ships. And it can still be a ship that had already gotten a token from before. Because again, that first part, the first player, that restriction is only for him. Second part's only for the second player. They're not cross canceling each other out. So that's Hondo. And a lot of people like to use Hondo in the ship phase so that way they can trigger things like fleet commands because the timing is the same timing. So you can choose to resolve in which order that you want. You can say, I'm giving Hondo to give a Concentrate Fire to one of my ships to then spend it on Intensify Firepower. It's as the second part of my ship phase timing. So that's totally legal. That's totally fine. And that's Hondo Ohnaka. So again, just to go over what his fact says, your opponent can assign command tokens to ships that you have assigned tokens to. Again, we've covered that. And in terms of what happens if you only have one ship, well, then you have to place only 1 token on one of your ships, and you have to give that token to your opponent. In this still is the reason for all this wording is, for example, if there's only 2 ships left on the board, 1 token's going to go to you. Then you have to give the other token you choose to your opponent. Then your opponent would give 1 token to himself, and then the other token he would be forced to give to the other ship. So that way, all 4 tokens, it doesn't matter if there's only 2 ships on the board, the tokens are still being assigned. So that's Hondo Ohnaka. He sounds more complicated than he really is. As essentially is, I get 2 tokens, I put them on 2 different things. Your opponent says, okay, now I have 2 tokens, and I put them on 2 different things. Even if it's a ship that has already gotten a token from the first time that the first player put tokens on it. It sounds like I'm repeating myself multiple times, but again, I'm trying to be clear about that, and hopefully you guys are understanding. Hopefully I explained that well enough. So there is no other crazy interactions or niche things going on with Hondo. He's very straightforward. So that is, of course, if you feel like I got anything wrong or if I got anything in error, please be sure to point it out. Let me know. I always try to make sure I'm presenting correct information. I always appreciate you guys watching videos, and my friends, I will catch you next time.